Fun fact, buying an F40 or quite honestly, any of these like really, really super rare cars, I have come to learn the hard way that just because you can afford them and you have the money to buy them doesn't mean you have the ability to buy one of these cars. I was looking for a LaFerrari. The LaFerrari was still kind of not new, but not that old. It could have been out 2 or 3 years. And I had heard that there were 2 LaFerraris at this shop that were customer cars, but had never been driven. They were still, the seats and everything were still wrapped with the plastic from the dealers or from the manufacturer, and I had heard that they were there. And what I found when you're trying to buy these kinds of cars is you can't just respond to these ones that are online. A lot of times they're asking ridiculous numbers, or they're not even a real car, or they're on consignment and somebody's asking some crazy numbers. So what I found when you're buying these cars is you kind of have to know who's who really has them, who has real access to these cars. And that's the other thing, even though if you're working with a broker, it might be a broker working with another broker, that knows the original owner of the car. So each guy's got to make money, and that car changed hands, and next thing you know, you're paying several $100,000 over because each person wants to make a profit on it. And literally, the car could flip 3 or 4 times before it gets to you. So to have access of 2 cars direct, of 2 owners that were real and were willing to sell and not go through a bunch of brokers and the whole little chain of things was extremely rare. So I show up at this shop, looking at these 2 cars, and they were amazing. Boy, was it hard to choose from. One had the red interior with black stitching, the other one was black with red interior on the inside, which is kind of the 2 configurations it came with. So I could kind of have what I wanted there, and to have that sitting there, never been driven, was unbelievable. So we're sitting there, we're talking about the cars, we're negotiating on a number, and we were getting really, really close. And I look over in the shop, and if you think about the profile of an F40, I see that very distinctive profile of that rear wing. And I'm like, wow, is that an F40? I'm like, I've never seen an F40 in person before. And the guy says, before he can even answer, I'm already like making my way. I'm beelining over this car. There's a shop full of tons of cars, all amazing stuff, and I'm beelining over this car. So come to find out, they had come into owning this car through a mechanic's lien. The person that owned it put the car in for service. Family didn't know he owned the car, and the guy passes away. Next thing you know, through the legal channels, they now own this car for like $8,000. And the guy proceeds to tell me this car's been sitting here for over 20 years. It's the owner of the shop, and you know, he hasn't really ever marketed for sale, never really said whether he wanted to sell it or not. It was just part of his private collection. We meet, we agree on a number. The number for the market at the time was about $200,000 higher than really where I thought the car should be. But look, it was a great car. This shop has got a great reputation. They were going to be able to restore the car, and even they were willing to give me, you know, a warranty on the car. So I'm like, wow, get it fully serviced, fully restored, and they'll warranty the car. That's worth a little bit of premium. And at the end of the day, listen, these kinds of cars, you can't get too caught up on what number you're paying for them at the time, because they only go up in value. So they're blue chip cars, and when you find a deal like that, sometimes you got to choke down a little bit more on the purchase price what you want, which I did. So I agreed to buy the car. I'd given about 1/3 down cash. The rest was going to be due in a few months, you know, depending on how long it took to get parts from Flory to get this car restored. But the rest would be due when the car was done. So I'm getting updates every couple of weeks. My wife and I both are getting more and more excited that we're getting this car. We're getting an F40. Oh my God, this is amazing. And then all of a sudden they kind of go radio silent on me. And I was like, something's up. And so I get a hold of one of the guys that runs the shop. And he says, yeah, we found some things wrong with the car. The owner would rather us try to maybe source a better car for you. Didn't want to say what was wrong with the car. They didn't want to make it public, but they were going to try to find me another car. They refund me my money. Super bummed. And also, I had a sense that didn't quite smell right. I'd say maybe 6 or 8 months go by, and I'm with one of the guys at the shop. We're at an event together. Everybody had a little bit of wine, and maybe the lips got a little looser, the memory got a little fuzzy, and he proceeds to tell me how they'd sold that F40 to some guy in another country. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Clearly he forgot what the story they had told me about this car. Clearly somebody came along and offered more money. If only I knew then that that was going to be a recurring theme with trying to buy my beloved F40. And we moved on to other things, right? Many other Ferraris we've added to the collection. Cars have come and gone since then. And then what we're doing with our collection has evolved quite a bit from then as well, which brought us back to this place where we're now getting the most iconic limited edition versions of older Ferraris. During this period of time, I'd found another F40. And in fact, I'd found the F40, another F40, decent deal. They were asking kind of the moon for the car at the time, but I'd also found a 599 GTO, another fantastic car I wanted to add to the collection as well. So I started negotiating a deal on the 599 GTO. We're emailing back and forth with the guy that had the F40 at the time, and it was a very well-known, very well-respected dealership here in the United States. They made a good move down. I got to give them credit. They made a good jump down. I still felt like we were about $175,000 apart from what was the real number for the market at that time. And I think they knew it too. So I thought, all right, I've negotiated deals like this before. I think they know they're still a little high. So I'm going to give them a little bit of time I'm going to put them on ice, let them wait a few days, see if they come to their senses. 3 days go by. And my wife and I are sitting out there on the patio, having a little afternoon wine. And we look at one another. We're talking about the car. And I look at my wife. I said, you know what, babe? Screw it. Let's just give them the number. And she said, you know what? You're right. It's been long enough. Let's get the car. So I call the guy. He was a really nice guy. And he goes, Louis, I wanted you to be the owner of that car. We sold it yesterday. And I was just devastated. My wife and I both were just absolutely devastated. I looked at my wife and I said, screw it. We're buying a very special car today. And we called and we bought the 599 GTO. The 599 GTO did not cure my desire for the F40. About 3 or 4 months go by. And working with John Tamarian there at Curated, I've bought a lot of really special cars from him. He's a great guy. He's as good as they come in the car business. And he finds an F40 side slider windows. So if you guys know much about F40s, there's only 100 that were ever made with the side window. It's a slider window like a race car. And it was the first 100 F40s produced. They command a premium. They're super collectible. And if you're going to invest the money into something, get the absolute best version you can, because long term you're going to get the biggest return on the dollar. We wanted a side slider F40, find one that we believe it was a good chance it was a good shape. It was in Japan. John knew the guy. He works the deal. I trust John explicitly. We and the owner of the car signed a purchase order agreement. That's binding, by the way. So we have the car sent to get a pre-purchase inspection done on the car. And about 4 or 5 days later, we're expecting this report to be back, and it should have already been back a day or so sooner. It doesn't take that long to get a PPI done. And John and I both are kind of starting to get a little worried, like, why are we not getting this back, this, that, and the other? And sure enough, the dealership that we had the car sent to got the guy to agree to sell him the car at a good chunk more than what he had agreed to sell it to us. So at this point, it's 3 F40s that I've literally had my hands on. One of which even had, well, 2 of which I had money on, quite honestly, and still lost the cars. And at this point, my wife and I started thinking, like, is the world trying to tell us something here? Are we not meant to own an F40? I mean, how hard is it to? I've never tried so hard to give somebody my money, and I continue to lose the asset each time. I honestly was just thinking, all right, I'm going to move on. The world's telling me an F40 is not meant to be, and maybe there's some reason for that. Who knows? And then the very next week, I decided to drive my Countach to a golf course that's about 2.5 hours away. While I'm driving the car, John Tamarian calls me. He says, Louis, I think I've got your F40. And I told him, I cut him off right there. I said, John, this has just been such a saga. And he knew the story from 7 years earlier. All 3 cars that had gone through my hands. I said, John, it's, I just don't think it's meant to be. He said, no. He says, I know the owner of this car. I've done a lot of business with this guy. He's bought cars from me. I've bought cars from him. It's a real deal. It won't fall through. This is a solid deal, solid car. The car's been restored back at the factory through Zanassi. It's Classic A certified. It checks all the boxes. And then he goes, but it's blue. And I'm like, well, I had a red F40 on the wall of my poster. I never dreamt of a blue one. We're talking and we're negotiating the deal, and he's trying to educate me on the car, and I just kind of wasn't really listening. All I heard was blue, and I'm like, One more thing the world's telling me, F40's not for you, dude. I talked to my wife about it, and she says, well, hey, just let's buy the car. It's through John, so we know it's a solid deal. We can finally bring the F40 home. And she says, well, just send it back to Zanassi there at the factory, have them paint it red, Class K certified. And we had this really cool idea of actually flying to Italy, take delivery of it there after it got painted, drive it around Italy for a couple of weeks and ship it home. Pretty cool idea. And so once we knew that's what we were gonna do, I finally broke the news to the kids again that, hey, Dad really thinks we're getting an F40 this time. And I was telling him we're gonna send it back and have it painted red. My son's like, Dad, are you nuts? I'm like, what? He goes, and he pulls out his phone right there and he starts showing me these Google searches of the blue F40 and how it was one of one, and because it was the only blue F40 painted by Zanassi, which Zanassi is at the factory, if you know that, and Ferrari contracts all the cars. So all the original F40s were painted by Zanassi, F40s, F50s, the Enzos, all the limited edition cars. The SP3s right now are being painted by Zanassi. That was an education to me. I was also educated that this was the only blue F40 in the world. My son's like, Dad, it'd be sacrilegious for you to end the identity this car has and what makes it so special. And he's like, it'll just be another red F40. My son schooled me that evening, and I'm glad he did. I'm glad he did. Finalized the deal, and we just didn't wait a second for anything. I told John, I said, don't put it on a boat. Every Saturday there are cargo planes. The car was in the UK, and I didn't want to wait for it to be on a boat. We'd paid for the car, wired the money, done deal. Obviously a lot of money. You know what F40s cost these days, especially you can imagine what one of one cost. And I spent all that money in a car that's not even in the US, I haven't even seen. Big risk. John gets it on the plane, car lands Saturday in Atlanta. We have a truck from Atlanta to his store down in Miami, Sunday night. Monday morning, 10 a.m., as soon as he opens the doors, my wife and I are already there waiting to take delivery of this car. We go through the car, everything's immaculate on the car. Like I said, been fully restored. I think it only had maybe 1,600 miles put on it since it had been restored. So the car was just in fantastic condition, fantastic shape. We took delivery of this car. We made the drive up to the Breakers Resort in Palm Beach. And I mean, ripping that hour, 10-minute drive. And this was the big thing for the F40. After all I had gone through and all the deals that fell apart, to finally get in this car, we were going to take delivery of it. I remember driving to the dealership that morning, and all I'm thinking is like, oh my gosh, don't let this be one of those never meet your heroes type things. You're gonna be let down or be disappointed. Wow, I need not worry. Getting in that car and driving it for the first time, we got outside Miami, and it is everything that every other person on YouTube or any other car magazine review that you've seen of the F40, it's everything they said and more. Because you gotta remember, as great as many of these people were or have been at describing the emotion and the senses and the sensation, the response, reaction that this car gives you, language just doesn't have the words to really describe how that car stirs your emotions and the way it responds. The car is unbelievable. It's feather light. When it comes on boost, it's just ballistic. It just shoves you in the back. It's crazy the way the pedal box is set up. I didn't even consciously think to do it. I just found myself automatically heel toeing with every downshift with the car. It begs to be driven that way. The 7-year Saga was worth every bit of it. It's truly a remarkable, special, incredible car to own and drive. And as you guys may already know, and you're gonna see a lot coming in the future, I drive all my cars and I drive them hard. I drive the way they're meant to be. I've had that car, I'm gonna say less than 6 months. I just looked at the mileage the other day, and we've put just under 2,000 miles on it already. And so look forward to driving that and bringing so much more of that content to you guys in the very near future and doing a deep dive on that car.